with President Trump, and I'll make a point.
But he's not for regime change.
He's not. So he and I disagree. Look, I think he thinks it would be better. He has not said he's for it. And you know what? Look, it is consequential when the President of the United States says, I'm for regime change. So I understand why he hasn't. What he has said is he's drawn a red line and said, Iran will not have a nuclear weapon, and the only acceptable outcome is complete dismantlement. So they have centrifuges. They're enriching uranium right now. They're trying to develop a nuclear weapon. He said they must have complete dismantlement. I led 52 senators, Republican senators, in a letter where we said we agree with President Trump. That's the red line, complete dismantlement. I agree with President Trump. I agree with him supporting Israel, taking out Iran's military leadership, taking out their nuclear capability. And I'll point out, look, if you look the first term, I am hard-pressed to think of a single foreign policy decision Donald Trump made the first term that I disagree with. And that's not entirely accidental, because I spent a lot of time the first term in the Oval Office with him. And what happened in the first term often is you would have in the administration, you had interventionists in the administration, you had isolationists. And they disagreed. They would fight within the administration. And often what it would give is an opportunity for me to come in and say, hey, there's a middle path here that President Trump agreed with frequently. And it's worth noting, in the first term, he most assuredly was not an isolationist. Look, he took out General Soleimani, which I emphatically agree with. And in fact, I introduced a resolution that we voted on the Senate floor commending him for taking out General Soleimani, who was the leader of the IRGC and who was responsible for killing over 600 American servicemen and women. When Trump came in, ISIS had a caliphate that had grown up under Obama that was about the size of the state of Indiana. And Trump came in and utterly decimated them. He killed the terrorists, took away their caliphate, and defeated them. And he also took out Baghdadi, the head of ISIS. I mean, those are not the actions of an isolationist, but at the same time...
I don't even know what isolationist is. It's just a slur designed to control... I mean, I've never met an isolationist. I don't even know what that means.
Okay, Rand Paul is my colleague. Rand is an isolationist.
Okay,
and Tucker, you've become one, and I don't mean it as a slur. You consistently say... You have said, actually, I want to read from your newsletter, because if you ask what an isolationist is, your newsletter a couple of days ago, you wrote, Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. And look, I believe you're sincere.
Yeah, why are they running Syria right now? And you're for that. Why is that?
What do you mean? I didn't say I'm for that. Do I know the name of the hitmen? No, I'm sorry. And I don't think we do either, because we would apprehend them.
Sorry about that. So getting back to... What he was writing, guys. First of all, this is an incredible 2 hours. If you have the time to watch it, I always watch everything at 2x, so I get through things very quickly. Fascinating. I mean, Cruz is obviously super intelligent lawyer. Tucker is he's a master debater. He's very quick. And so is Ted Cruz. Tucker comes off a little snooty quite a bit during it, and it definitely gets under Cruz's skin. Cruz keeps it pretty chill the entire time. But Tucker obviously is trying to hammer his points across, and he's trying to, Tucker has the idea that Cruz is pushing, this regime change war, and he doesn't want that, and he wants to be the voice. Very loudly saying, "I don't want war with Iran at almost any cost." And Cruz is saying, "Well, there could be big causes, and these are what the causes are." I think I got back to the point where he was reading his newsletter. Let's see if we got that.
You wrote, Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb, and we're hoping to get back to the negotiating table. We will see. There are several people in leadership in Iran that will not be coming back, Trump said following the strikes.
Right.
It's worth taking a step back and wondering how any of this helps the United States. We can't think of a single way. Okay, that to me is the essence of isolationism. And let me just ask you, when the Ayatollah chants death to America, I believe him. Do you not believe him? Do you think he doesn't mean it when he says death to America?
Well, I think he hates America. For sure. And I'm opposed to that.
And do you think he's willing to act on it? It's not just hate America. He also is leading a country and trying to develop a nuclear weapon.
Under certain circumstances, for sure. So the question is, do you act in a way that makes that more or less likely? And that's a tough call. It's something that you can debate. One of the ways you shut down debate is by calling people names like isolationists, pretending they're like pro-Nazi or something, or as you did, claiming I'm an anti-Semite. That's not a way to get to a solution or have a rational conversation. That's a way to make people be quiet. And I'm against that. And
okay, so if you don't like the label isolationist, how would you... Look, Rand, and I served with Rand. Rand is a friend of mine, but Rand opposes every military action in every circumstance.
Of course I don't oppose every military. This whole thing is infantile, and you know that it is. It's a way to call people names.
So which of Trump's military actions do you support?
And
you disagree with them all.
And make them be quiet.
Give me another name. If you don't like that, I'm not trying to have you be quiet. We've been talking an hour and a half. I'm asking, if you don't like the name isolationist, how would you describe it?
I would describe myself in the same way you falsely described yourself in this conversation.
Falsely?
Yes,
so
falsely.
What did I say false?
You said that the only thing that matters in a foreign policy decision is whether it helps the United States.
I didn't say the only, I said the predominant.
That's what I understood.
Okay.
So let me revise what you said and apply it to myself and say the only thing that matters is whether or not it serves the United States. And I feel very stung by what happened in Iraq, if I'm being honest. Possibly because, unlike you, I guess, I supported it. And
so Cruz actually starts making a very interesting point here, right? So Tucker obviously has evolved his views. He was vehemently for the Iraq war, and he has obviously come around. And he, he's not to the point of Ron Paul, who actually is an isolationist. I can kind of see myself in that camp, if to be quite honest. I just think that we are spread throughout the world. We're the world's police. I don't think we should be. That's my personal views. But I'm open to. I'm not going to shut down any idea. I don't care what the idea is. Right. If you can explain to me, sit me down, I will listen to why we need to, invade Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, whatever. I'll listen to you. And if you make a valid argument or a valid point, or if there's some, I'm all for it. Like, I'll listen to it, reason with it. I can understand it. And then we can move forward with what it is that, what the plan of action is. So what he starts saying to Tucker is that because he found out that the war in Iraq was a debacle and it was under false pretenses and that we shouldn't have been there, there was no reason to be there, and it cost, hundreds of billions of dollars and many, many lives, U.S. lives, just lives in general. It doesn't matter. It obviously matters more if they're U.S. lives, but a lot of people died unnecessarily. And Ted Cruz starts saying that because of that he feels that Tucker has shifted and is overcompensating for his past of a war that he shouldn't have supported.
I saw us get drawn into it in a way that nobody anticipated, and I saw the cost just about $3 trillion. And the cost on so many levels to the United States was just so profound. And I felt like,
mistake.
Gosh, it reminds me of Kaiser Wilhelm in 1914 saying, my men will be back by the time the leaves turn. And of course, that destroyed Christian Europe. So it's like you don't really know where these things are going once the shooting starts. That's my only point. And calling people names, anti-Semite, isolationist, to get them to stop talking is not the way to serve your country. That's all I'm saying.
So I'm trying to have a real and serious conversation.
Right.
And look, a lot of this has been contentious. I wish it had not, because as we started out by saying, you and I agree vehemently on 80% of the issues. This discussion is focused on the 20% where we don't. I will say, look, on Iraq.
Tucker was definitely being a little bit of a C word, but that's him, and we kind of like that, and that's why we like him.
You look at the 2016 presidential campaign where you had 17 Republicans running. If you set Rand aside, and his views are on one side, there were only two candidates on that stage that opposed the Iraq war. Me and Donald Trump were the only two. Everyone else thought the Iraq war was a great thing. I think it was a disaster. So you and I agree on that as well. In my view, I think your foreign policy has gone too far. So, let me ask you, is there a military action Trump has undertaken that you agree with? Because I've not heard anything.
Look, I would say it's really simple. I believe in self-defense. That's why I keep firearms at home. I think it's morally justified to defend yourself, your family, your property, your nation. And so to the extent that you can deter a threat through violence always being the least appealing choice, violence always being, if I can finish, always being a tragedy, I think you can justify the use of violence in self-defense. That is my personal view, and that applies to me and to the country that I live in. Those are my views. That's not an isolationist view. It's not an anti-Israel view. It's not an anti-Semitic view, with apologies. It is, I think, a pretty common sense view. But my problem is that lawmakers in Washington are light on detail with these things, and they speak, as you do, entirely in moral terms. These people are bad. These people are...
I'm not speaking entirely in moral terms. I'm not interested in killing bad guys. I'm interested in killing people who are trying to kill us.
If we had...
That's different. I'm not engaged in morality.
Are you...
No, but here's the point, right? He's interested in trying to kill people that are trying to kill us. How? Right? How are these people that are in Iran trying to kill us? And if they're trying to kill us because they're trying to kill soldiers that are over there, well then why are they over there? And if they're doing terrorist attacks here, okay, that's a different story. Now you have a 9/11 scenario, and that obviously changes the dynamic, right? If you have isolated terror attacks, things of that nature, it's very hard to pinpoint that to a particular regime or whatever. All these things are very complicated. They're very nuanced. But however, how is the military in Iran going to hurt us? They can definitely hurt Israel. We can all see that. How are they going to hurt the U.S.? That's the question. And that's what we keep getting. We keep getting bombarded with that they're going to death to America. They're coming after this and that. How's that? What are they getting on a boat? Or is our border wide open and a whole bunch of people are going to come in here and invade the country? Yeah, that's kind of something that happened. But these are things that we can easily prevent. We don't have to invade them in their home turf to prevent them from getting at us. And even if we did do that, let's say we did, is that going to stop future terrorist attacks from happening, or is it going to, make them even worse? Where does it end?
Now, because you told me that the government of Iran is presently trying to assassinate Donald Trump, and then you
that
said,
is undisputed. There's literally nobody who disputes that fact.
Then why don't you support military action right now against Iran?
We are engaged in military action right now.
Why don't you support offensive military action?
We're bombing the crap out of them. Israel is, and we're supporting them. Israel is.
Okay.
So
why shouldn't the U.S. military defend its own president? I don't understand that.
Look, and it goes back to
because you don't really believe it's true. That's why.
Nobody disputes it, Tucker. Did you land on the moon? What other conspiracies do you not believe? Was 9/11 an inside job? I mean, what?
So I've asked you the names of these people. I've asked
I don't
you how
know the
you
names
know
of the Iranian hitman. I know it because
see, and he's getting to a really interesting point, and this is something that I personally loved this debate. It was fascinating. It was interesting. I thought I thought Cruz did well for himself. This is Tucker's wheelhouse, right? This isn't Ted Cruz has argued in front of the Supreme Court, so he's a legal mind, but this is Tucker's wheelhouse, right? In front of the cameras, going back and forth in a debate. Tucker is a debater. That's his thing, and he's very good at it. But ultimately, what he's trying to show and what he's trying to bring about is that we're getting all these things. So now we're saying that Iran was trying to assassinate Trump. And what Tucker's getting at is, everyone's saying all these things and everyone's talking about all these whether it be, assassination attempts or nuclear weapons or all these things. And he feels, and it does seem to me like we're back pre-Iraq war, where everyone is saying the thing and trying to hit the nerve that finally gets, the U.S. beast awoken, right? To everyone rally around and do an attack, right? And it just seems like they're trying to string these narratives together in order to get us into another war. And now that may or may not be true. It seems like it is true, right? Because if you do I asked Grok or maybe ChatGPT, I forget which one. I said, when did Bibi Netanyahu first start saying that Iraq was close to a nuclear bomb? I mean, he's been saying this for nearly 40 years, right? And then I get into an argument in the office, and well, he's been saying it, but then they take an action, and then they get set back. I'm like, no, he's been saying it for 40 years. That they're close to a nuclear bomb. And, saber rattling, getting people riled up, that's the way the game is played. So I just, this was a great debate. I recommend everyone watching it. It was awesome. They both got their points across. I think Tucker obviously came out looking a bit better. But that's what we need. This is what we need. And we need people not to be afraid. And anyone that's going anti-Tucker or anti-Tucker's views is probably going to think twice next time they sit down in front of him. But guys, thank you so much for joining me in the video. Give me a like, give me a share, give me a subscribe. Watch this Tucker Carlson interview. Drop down in the comments, and if you want me to do another segment on it, we can do that. I just picked this one out. I just dropped the needle on it and let it run and see what they were talking about. So this wasn't anything in particular that I had a point to get across. I just like opining on just random things because everyone else, was kind of talking about the other video where he asked him the population of Iran, which is, it's kind of like whatever, it's a little bit of got you, not really that big of a deal. I mean, granted, like he said, good point. If you're looking to annihilate a country or bomb them to hell, maybe you want to, brush up on the general, facts of the country. But like, share, subscribe. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks a lot, guys.